New bolt action player, the terrain mistakes that are costing you games. Most new bolt action players lose games before a single die is rolled, and the reason has nothing to do with their army list, their dice luck, or even tactics. It's the terrain, and specifically, it's a mistake almost every new player makes with terrain that hands their opponent the game on a plate. We're going to fix that today. Here's what nobody tells you when you start bolt action. Terrain isn't just decoration, it's not just something you scatter on the table so it looks nice for photos. Terrain is the third army. It decides whether your infantry can survive crossing, it decides whether the tank has a firing lane or not, and it decides who wins objective games before the dice come out of the bag. And the rules around terrain and bolt action, cover, line of sight, buildings, they're surprisingly deep if you're playing them wrong, or if the table is set up wrong, you're basically playing a different game to your opponent. So, in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly how terrain works, what a good table looks like, and the 4 mistakes I see new players make every single time. Stick around because the last one is the one that costs the most games. And if you're new here, welcome. This is part of our new to bolt action series, which is built specifically to get you past the frustrating early stages of the game and into actually enjoying it. Hit subscribe and you'll get every video in the series as it drops. Right, let's get started with the fundamentals, because this is where the confusion usually starts. Terrain in bolt action does 2 things. It blocks line of sight and it provides cover, and those 2 things are not the same. That's the first thing to get your head around. Line of sight in bolt action, line of sight is drawn from behind the fire's head to the head or the torso of the enemy model. So, if even one figure in your squad can draw line of sight to even one figure in the enemy squad, you have line of sight. Terrain that blocks line of sight completely prevents that shot from happening. Think large buildings, dense woods, hills. That line simply cannot be drawn. Cover is different. Cover doesn't stop the shot. Cover reduces the effect of that shot. If your unit is behind a hedge, a low wall, or in light woods, they're in soft cover. That gives them a +1 to their armour save. If they're behind a stone wall, in a solid building, or in hard cover, that's +2 to their save. So the question isn't just, can I see them? It's, can I see them and what's between us? And this matters enormously for how you set up and use terrain, which we'll get to in a minute. And this is where most people get it consistently wrong, and where the game completely changes once you understand it. Let's talk about the specific terrain types you'll encounter most often. Soft cover, hedges, light fencing, crops, light woodland, low scrub. Your units get a +1 modifier to their armour save. Not massive, but against rifle fire at long range, it all helps. Hard cover, stone walls, solid fencing, rubble, gun emplacements, +2 to saves. And this is where you want to be if you're holding ground under fire. And then there's buildings. Buildings are in a category of their own. Units inside a building are in hard cover. They fire out of windows, so their line of sight is effectively to any point that can be seen from the structure. And critically, the building itself blocks line of sight to anything sheltering behind it. A good solid building on your flank isn't just cover, it's a tactical asset. Now, on the subject of buildings, I've been given a set of MDF buildings from Sarissa Precision, an example of exactly what you want on your starter table. They're solid footprint, clean line of sight blocking, and they look excellent. So if you're building out your first gaming table, they tick all the right boxes. I'll link them in the description, but more importantly, have at least 2 or 3 proper buildings on your table. It changes the game. So back to terrain types. Area terrain, woods, ruins, built up areas, work slightly differently. And the general rule is that if units are inside area terrain, They can be seen and they can see. Area terrain blocks line of sight for models completely obscured by it. Learn these distinctions and they'll change how you position every single unit. And if you want the game plan sheet that I put together, just put game plan sheet in the comments below and I'll send you a copy. Right, so now you know what terrain does, let's talk about how to put it on the table, because this is where the game is actually won or lost before you even start. The general guideline for bolt action is roughly 25% terrain coverage on your table. It sounds like a lot, but it's about the right amount to start off with. Too little and it becomes a killing field. Whoever goes second on turn 1 gets destroyed. Too much and it becomes an infantry crawl with no room for armour. Think in thirds. Your table has a centre ground and 2 flanks. The centre should have at least one significant piece of blocking terrain. A building, a dense ruin, a hill. Something that forces the advance to split. The flanks should have soft cover, hedgerows, low walls, light woods, not impassable, but enough that moving through them costs something. And this is important. The table should be roughly symmetrical. Not identical, but symmetrical in terms of coverage and opportunity. If one player has a clear field of fire across their deployment zone and the other has a building blocking half of theirs, you don't have a balanced game, you have a favour. A simple rule of thumb, stand at each deployment edge and ask yourself, if I were advancing from here, where would I go? If the answer is I have no idea, it's all open, you need more terrain. If the answer is I'd go there, there and there, you've got a well-designed table in all probability. And this matters especially in missions with objectives. In Top Secret, for example, the objective carrier needs a little bit of cover on the table to be able to retreat. If the table doesn't give that, the mission becomes a completely different game. Now, the 4 mistakes, because knowing the rules is one thing, these are the specific things I see new players do that cost them the game, and most of them they don't even realise they're doing. Mistake 1, not enough terrain. I've seen it at clubs, table set up with 4 small pieces of scattered terrain and a hill. What happens? Turn 1, somebody wipes out half an enemy, there's no counterplay, there's no tactical interest, it's just whoever fires first. New players especially struggle here because they're still learning the rules. They don't need a table that punishes every error instantly. Terrain density gives everyone a chance to actually play the game. Mistake 2, asymmetric setup. One player has a building anchoring their flank. The other has an open field. One player gets commanding elevation on their right, the other gets a ditch. And this comes from placing terrain carelessly rather than deliberately. Take 60 seconds to walk both sides before you start. It's a real difference. Mistake 3, treating all terrain the same. This one is subtle. New players often use whatever's on the table without asking, is this soft cover or hard cover? Is this blocking line of sight or just obstructing? You need to agree with your opponent before the game starts. Every piece of terrain on the table should have a designation, and if you don't know what it is, it'll cause arguments mid-game and you'll probably play it wrong. Mistake 4, ignoring building rules. Buildings are the most powerful piece of terrain in many ways on a bolt action table, and they're the most underused by new players. A squad in a building is in hard cover, and in many cases has elevated sightlines across the midfield. A single unit in a central building can dominate the board, and if there's a building on the table and you're not using it, you're potentially leaving a free tactical asset for your opponent to use. But remember about high explosives. You don't want to be in the buildings if it's there. So if you remember one thing from this video, remember this about terrain. It's not decoration, it's deployment. The table you set up before the game is part of your army list. Treat it that way. Right, let's bring this together into something practical. If you're building out your terrain collection as a new player, here's how I'd approach it. Start with buildings, like these. 2 or 3 solid line of sight blocking structures. You don't need a full village. You need enough that there's a meaningful building in the centre of most setups. Sarissa and Warlord both make solid starter sets, and I'll link both of these in the description. Add linear terrain, hedgerows, low walls, fencing. These define lanes of advance and break up the killing ground without completely blocking lines of fire. And you want enough cover for both flanks. Then area terrain. 2 or 3 woodland bases or a ruin or 2. These give depth and soft cover options, potentially hard cover options for advancing infantry. And that's genuinely enough for a functional starter table. You're looking at 68 pieces total, enough for about 25% coverage on a 6x4 without the table becoming a maze. Painting matters less than people think when you're starting out. Spray painted grey MDF reads perfectly well at a gaming table. Get the pieces on the table, start using them. You can paint them later. What I would say is consistency helps. If your terrain looks like it belongs to the same world, the game does feel much better. And it doesn't take much. A base coat, a dry brush, some static grass, that's enough to get there. So, terrain. It blocks line of sight, it provides cover, and the table you set up is almost as important as the list you bring. Know your cover types. Soft, hard buildings. Set up with intention. Symmetrical, 25% coverage, something meaningful in the centre. Avoid the 4 mistakes. And if you're collecting terrain, start with buildings and add linear obstructions later. Do that and you're already ahead of most new players walking into their first games. And why not like and subscribe down below while you're at it? It genuinely helps the channel and you'll get the rest of the new Tabletop Action series as it drops. Take care guys, and we'll talk to you soon.